Oh my god, I made a helmet! Oh wait. Go. Hey everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm Jedimanda and I made a Captain Marvel helmet. That's right. Anyways, welcome back to my channel, guys. I'm Jedimanda, and I'm a cosplayer, and I'm going to show you today how you can make your own Captain Marvel helmet. This is the exact helmet, or kind of close to the helmet. I made some creative liberties to the Brie Larson MCU Captain Marvel outfit, not necessarily your comic book one. Before we really get into the nitty-gritty of this build, I want to give you all a few heads up. One, if I can make this, you can make this. I don't really consider myself a foam smith that much, but I was able to make this in less than a month, and it looks pretty awesome, if I do say so myself, not gonna lie. Two, all of my materials only cost me around 150 US dollars. That's pretty awesome. And three, you do need certain tools to finish this type of build, and I will list them all in the video and in the description below. Okay, let's go over some materials that you're gonna need to make this build. This build actually breaks down into two parts, the helmet and... Now one of the first things you're gonna notice about this helmet is that I have lights. Glowy, glowy, cool lights. See? That's neat. That was actually one of the first things that I bought for this, that go on and off with 2 AA batteries, I believe. I actually purchased those on eBay. The link will be below in the description. First thing you're gonna need, and I used it's hard to tell right now, but a cheap Halloween latex mask of Captain Marvel's comic book look. Now I did purchase this before all of the designs for the movie came out, so I had to take a lot of creative liberties. I believe right now on eBay and Amazon and other Halloween stores, they do carry this type of look of helmet in a latex mask version. That you can buy if you want, but I bought the mask as far as a time cutting procedure. I didn't really have the time to measure my head and basically draft a pattern from that. I didn't have the time, and so I figured if I can get an already helmet base of something that I can add foam onto, that's a good idea. And I did, and it actually worked out fantastic because glue holds well to latex, especially hot glue and contact cement. So the first thing I did was to buy that base, and I got it off of AliExpress, which was through an eBay seller, and it was stupidly $49. I don't know why, but it was the most expensive thing of this build. You might be, at this time, might be able to find something cheaper if you want. The next things that I purchased were the foam. I used 6mm and 3mm foams from TNT Cosplay Supplies and So Much Cosplay. Both are foam suppliers. You will need both sizes. The next things that I had to grab were contact cement, quick seal, which is a caulk, and hot glue. I used basically a combination of hot glue and contact cement for this build. If you feel comfortable for using just contact cement, you can. If you feel comfortable using hot glue, you can. Both worked out and it's still fine. I don't necessarily have a good ventilation area, so for me to use contact cement, it's kind of difficult. So hot glue actually works out for my foam builds, which aren't a lot, but it works for me, so don't DM me. The next things that I purchased were the paints, and I used specifically Jacquard Lumiere paints for this build because I wanted a metallic finish and I wanted something that will flex. And both of those did perfect. The blue is the indigo and the red is the crimson. I also used black acrylic and gunmetal acrylic from Plaid Product Paints. And I also purchased rare earth magnets for all of the magnetized bits for the build, which is held on a lot by magnets. You will also need black plasti dip, and you will need some snaps, preferably about a 1/2 inch wide snaps for the this part. Last, we're going to talk about the mohawk. And the materials that I used for that is a special type of foam. It's called Plastazote. It's a foam that is meant to have LEDs under it and basically diffuse and make the light brighter and further instead of just one single LED. It's hard to tell, but in the video continuing after this, you'll be able to see how I put the hair on here, and it will make sense, I promise. So just hang tight and watch the video. So I used Plastazote foams from TNT Cosplay Supplies, one package of weft from Arda Wigs in the color Honey, and that was the package of short weft, not long weft. We'll need a bottle of tacky glue, specifically tacky glue, and 2 packs of 60 warm LED fairy lights, and that's what these packs are. Last thing I want to talk about are the tools that you'll need. You'll need a heat gun, you'll need a hot glue gun, you'll need X-Acto knives, you will need pencils, pens, paper. You will definitely need a Dremel. A Dremel, for those of you who don't know, a Dremel was definitely the most handy tool I have for this entire project, and all it is a handheld sander with bits on it that you can really get in there and sand down and smooth down all of the edges for this helmet. It's ideal. And also paintbrushes, scissors, drafting paper, and patience. Tons of patience. Last thing I want to add that was really handy was a foam head and a clamp that I actually use as a wig stand. That was super, super handy. All right, so I went over the materials and the tools you will need, so let's get into the build. Okay, so when my latex mask got here, the first thing I needed to do was remove that god-awful hair. I mean, look at that, that's terrible. Now, I just removed it with a pair of scissors and set it aside. Next, you're gonna wanna remove the chin piece. Pretty simple, draw a line, cut it off. It's much easier to get it on and off with that thing not on. So now go ahead and pat out the foam head to your head measurements, clip it in the back, and let's start building on this thing. So the first thing I want to say is that this project is definitely all about trial and error. You want to just really start cutting out a bunch of shapes and seeing if it fits. That is all I did to this build. So right here, I'm going to start making the piece that just drapes over the top of the head with foam, like just cutting it out and seeing if it works. That is basically this entire build. The first thing we need to establish is the area for the hair to come through, and that's what these pieces are. I'm basically measuring and seeing what will go on. To start patting out the super angles of the helmet, I use contact cement, not necessarily quick seal at the moment, to start adding foam pieces directly on to the latex. It worked quite well. If you're not used to contact cement, hot glue will work, but for these pieces, I recommend contact cement. And right now, I'm just creating shapes that I know will make the angles of the helmet. Her comic book helmet is way more round than the MCU helmet, so that's what I'm doing here. Now I'm making the opening piece for the mohawk. I need it to be nice and round over the skull. So this part actually took me a while. Take a heat gun, pin it to that section of the head, and just work it with your hands to get it as round as you can. Pinning it on the sides, wrapping ribbon around just like I have here to get that foam to mold to the right shape you want. And it actually really does work. It just takes time, just like this entire project. It works, but it takes time. Next, I just cut out the eyes, and then I'm going to start sculpting around the face. I went ahead and put the center open seam for the mohawk just to make it easier to work with on and off of the helmet. Next, I'm just adding foam on top of foam. This is another piece that will go for the helmet, the mohawk spot in the middle of the head. And I'm using hot glue at this moment because I just need to work faster, and hot glue really works. So once I have that piece added on and to the shape that I want, nice and smooth, go ahead and put that center open for the mohawk, and I'm once again adding more foam pieces. I will say those main pieces were the 6mm foam, and that red piece that you see is the 3mm foam, or the one, I can't remember, but it's the smaller piece. Really just work with the images that you find off the internet and to see where you need to build and where you need to smooth. That's all this piece is. So basically just kind of watch and see where I put pieces. It's kind of hard to explain, but I did a lot of beveling of my edges of the foam to get it to be nice and smooth in spots and actually pretty rigid in other spots. Right here, I'm actually using tracing paper to get a certain shape of a piece of foam that I will be putting right there. This works by just placing the tracing paper directly onto the helmet with some pins and then just tracing it. Once you're done with that, take it to your drafting table, and then I just put about a 1-inch mark and then use that as a pattern to cut out foam pieces. You can use this for the majority of your build. It's actually pretty handy. Right here, I took that piece that I used the pattern for, beveled the edges, and then hot glued it on. Pretty simple, right? It makes sense if you watch me do it. Now, me trying to figure this out as I'm going, it didn't make any sense. It was all trial and error. Doing the tracing paper on top of the helmet again to get the eyes, the eye foam shape. Voila, like so. Take a heat gun to mold that foam to the shape that you want over the nose piece. And then once I got the look I wanted, I opened the eyes up a little bit more with a craft knife, then glued it on where I saw fit. Right now I'm working on the sides of the helmet to where they connect to the chin piece. This is also just adding on craft foam and seeing the shapes that I want by looking at the design of the helmet. Be patient with yourself at this step. It's all about designing and redesigning the helmet to see what will best work for you in the shape that you want. You can adhere any type of the foam to the design of the MCU helmet as much as you want. Here, I'm just taking a little bit of creative liberties because I know this isn't the exact shape, but that's okay. I am working with as I can. So I kept the foam there, added some pieces, beveled some edges, and tried to make it look as much and as close to the design as I wanted. Here I took some tape and actually drew out a pattern on top of the foam helmet and then moved that to foam and then took the pattern off and put the foam on the helmet. That's also another way you could do this. Now it's time to quick seal. Now this is a very important step because you'll notice that there's a lot of raw edges, there's a lot of seams that the glues make, and this is basically to cover up all those seams. I use this quick seal, which is pretty great. Use it by using a piece of foam, adding it directly into the gaps and the edges, and it will look like a mess once it's done. This is an important step. It will make the helmet look nice and professional. Then
2,000 years later
starts the sanding. Sanding's gonna take you a minute, so just take some evenings, sand and caulk and sand and...
One eternity later.
Then it's time to plasti dip. Easiest part of the whole thing in my opinion. I did about 10 layers of plasti dip. Actually, my dad did about 10 layers of plasti dip to get it to the look I want, and it made it so nice and smooth and a great place to start painting on. Now, one note about the paint, you're gonna need to do a lot of layers of this paint. For the blue, in the blue sections, I did about 3 layers of blue. And for the red, I actually did about 7 layers of red. The blue turned out pretty great after the 3rd layer, but the red actually started getting really streaky. And I started to get kind of worried. But after about the 4th coat, it actually started to blend quite well. So this is some thin acrylic paint. The Jacquard stuff is worth it if you want that metallic sheen. But I do suggest about 7 layers of red paint on top of each other to get it to look nice and smooth. You can use an airbrush. I just don't really have that capability with the airbrush that I have in the area that I'm in, so everything kind of gets painted by hand in my studio. But look at the nice red finish. I mean, that's about 7 layers deep, but it turned out great. And now I took some black and gray acrylic paint into the grooves to get those things to pop out just a little bit more and to get it a little battle worn, you know, to give it some accents. And this definitely was a key part of the paint job for the helmet, in my opinion. Turned out looking really great with the black and the gray bits added, and I kind of gave it a little bit of a, you know, a wartime, you know, sheen, I guess. Turned out pretty great. I was super happy with it. Now the next thing we need to do is the mohawk. Oh wait, nope, I'm just kidding. We need to do the magnets first. Now this is for the back piece of the head, where I have this piece of foam that lays on top to cover the wires of the mohawk that come down. And all I did was drill holes with my Dremel and add some magnets and then put some super glue, industrial glue over the top. I'm also using magnets and a combination of snaps to keep the chin piece where it needs to be. Now is my sketch time that I wanted to do for the mohawk. I figured out the look and the shape that I wanted. The first thing I did was to take a piece of scrap foam and to get that angle of the helmet's head that I needed for me to put the foam on. Now, just like the entire build, this is a cut and match type of experimentation here. I did make the mohawk bits 3-dimensional, so that's why there are 3 pieces, like 3 pieces of a pyramid on top of the mohawk. And I will try my best to find these pieces and put the link below of the PDF if you want to use it, but you'll have to adhere to the shape of your head. But after that, I cut out 2 pieces of the Plastazote and little triangle to get the 3-dimensional look, and I just started gluing them together. The Plastazote works extremely well with hot glue. And I do suggest getting a little foam or silicone fingertip to smooth out the edges of the hot glue so you don't burn yourself, but also doesn't make it so glumpy and gluey. So once I have all of the pyramid mohawk pieces put together, it's time to start the lights. But first I pinned them together on top of the head to see if I liked the shape of the mohawk, and I really did like the shape of the mohawk. Right here is where you want to do any adjusting pieces to the foam before you start putting the lights in. So now the lights are going in. The good thing about these fairy lights is that they're all on wires. You can kind of bend them each shape you want, and I pretty much divided up about 12 to 15 lights per mohawk. I did end up putting 120 LED lights throughout the whole thing to get it to really shine, but you can do one strain if you want, totally up to you. But I just added it in and basically glued it down with hot glue. I used also some industrial glue for the pieces towards the top that I didn't want the hot glue glumping out. And once I had the pieces in there, I took the Dremel to kind of Dremel the edges down a little bit. The Plastazote foam works really well with the Dremel. And then I just started piecing it together. I cut slits in between the front triangle pieces to get the LEDs to go through each one of the mohawk, and it all just kind of strands together like a Christmas tree, as weird as that sounds. I did use some clips to help keep the glue nice and safe and secure within the mohawk pieces like you see right there. And it's just kind of a mess in there, and then I just put glue, hot glue in different spots, and it stays. Pretty nice, right? I thought so. Okay, now I have all of my lights into my mohawk. I cut a piece of EVA foam and just glued the mohawk directly to it. That is the shape of my skull where the mohawk needs to be. Now, let's do the hair. I know this looks intimidating, but don't be intimidated. What I want to suggest to you is that you need some patience for this. It's gonna take a while, and it's gonna get really gluey. So I went ahead and did one side to show you what the final look looks like, and this is what the non-haired side looks like. So my biggest thing to tell you guys is that you're going to need tacky glue and water. It is a 2-to-1 ratio of tacky glue to water. I do suggest 2 parts tacky glue, 1 part water. You don't necessarily want it runny. You want it kind of the consistency of corn syrup. Thank you to Calbutt Crunchies for telling me this ratio for the hair. So once you apply some glue down onto the foam, take a piece of the weft, keep the weft on the hair. You don't want to cut that off yet, or the hair is just going to get gluey, and gently place the weft down along the side of the mohawk. Once the hair hits the glue, it tends to clump up. So this is a very tedious, slow process. So just pat down the hair, move it along, pat down the hair on top of the glue, move it along, and then once you have the hair down, do another layer of glue on top. Now don't go too rough with this paintbrush. You're just gonna wanna glue in spots gently, and then once you kind of have a little bit of it established, cut the ends of the hair off, and then just move your hair towards the point end of your mohawk. This does take a while. I can't stress this enough. And you're also going to want to take the glue off of your fingers every once in a while, because that glue from your fingers will transfer onto the hair and you'll have clumpy spots, and you don't want that. And so this is basically all it is. It's just adding wefts on top of wefts and gluing it down carefully in the spots you want. You don't necessarily want to get it too thick because you will not be able to see the hair beneath. So use your best judgment to see how much you want the hair on top of the glue for this measure. Like I said, it takes a while, so just add some wefts and then put down some more glue, add some wefts, put down some more glue. Remember that you can use pins to keep things down, and once the glue dries, you can cut off the pieces of weft that you see hanging right there. And like I said, I'm just doing the whole mohawk like that. So once I have all the glued hair down on the mohawk, I tie little ribbons onto the edges of the mohawk to keep that point nice and spiky. And then I actually at this moment ran out of tacky glue, so now I'm using some Elmer's glue. Don't add any water to the Elmer's glue. It's pretty thin enough just to get the tips of that mohawk to go down where it needs to be. Next, I'm actually going and I'm bending my acrylic sheeting for my LED eyes. It looks kind of strange, but this is actually something you're desperately going to need, because when you buy the LED eye parts, they come as flat sheets of acrylic, and your eyeballs are not flat. Your mask is not flat. You're going to want to round it with a heat gun. Be very, very gentle when you're doing that, but it does work. I do highly suggest before that you add the LEDs in. So now once the mohawk is done, I cut off the wefts. I added some bits of glued weft to the edges to cover up the foam, just to make sure there's hair there. And it turns out great. The last thing I did was to add a little bit of hot glue just to seal down those edges of the hair so they don't come up when I take it in and out of the helmet. That's more of a safety precaution. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I did, and I think it worked out great. So now I'm putting my acrylic sheeting pieces back onto the little LEDs that come with the battery operated spot, and I just took some masking tape to get that to adhere, and now I'm adding the LEDs into the mask. Put some masking tape down where I know it was going to need to be, and basically I added this last piece of fleece just to cover up the really sharp bits of the acrylic. I will suggest you do some electrical tape instead of masking tape, but that's all I had at the moment, and it worked out pretty good. So the last thing I did was put it on, and I turned it on, and oh my god, it worked! I can't believe it. I couldn't believe it. So this was a long build. I know I rambled on for forever, but if you have any questions on it, please comment below. Please comment below. This is a long build, and I can't wait to see what you do with it. Alright you guys, I really hope you decide to make your own Captain Marvel helmet, and if you do, please tag me in your builds. I want to see them. Tag me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I love sharing cosplayers' projects that they use my tutorials on. It makes me so happy. Thank you guys so much for watching the tutorial. I hope you have a really good luck building your own. And there's a cat in my spot. I'm sorry. Freaking Flurkin? Really? Don't forget to like this video and share with your friends and all your cosplay friends and all the Captain Marvel hype. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. So many more tutorial and costume overviews will be coming soon. I actually have the time to film them this year, so you guys are going to be seeing a lot more stuff from me and this channel. Thanks guys, and good luck!